Hey, everybody, and welcome to Friday. And boy, do we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's begin with last night. And kudos to Fox. We talked about this on yesterday's show. They were doing Thursday Night Baseball. It was the Rays, it was the Orioles at Camden Yard. The Rays, of course, came into that game last night trailing Baltimore by 2 games. The Rays won the game 4-3. It was exciting. And I think what Fox did well last night was capturing the fact that it was almost like a playoff game, and they Billy Webb, who directs the shows for Fox, kudos to Billy, who he always likes to use the tight shots of faces and really get the feel of the game. And Billy did an outstanding job. Broadcast crew again outstanding for Fox last night. So as we said yesterday, this game the series, I'm sorry, between the Rays and the Orioles, which, could very well uh, tell us who's going to win the American League East. We'll have all 4 games televised somewhere. And so that brings us to tonight. And tonight, the Rays and the Orioles are on Apple TV Plus. That's a 7 o'clock start Saturday night, 7 p.m. as well. Of course, 1:30 on Sunday. The 4th game of the series will also be on MLB Network. I'll tell you what, folks, if last night's game is any indication of how this series is going to be, if you're a baseball fan, it's must-watch TV, no question about that. So, Rays and the Orioles tonight on Apple TV Plus. MLB Network Saturday and Sunday on MLB Network. Okay, so that's where to find them, and it's going to be a lot of fun watching that series. Now, the other day, Wednesday, I told you that the normal slate of games, which we see on Wednesday for Major League Soccer, had been postponed because of the had be not postponed, excuse me, rescheduled because of the situation with international play. There's a lot of international play going on right now. Lionel Messi, who is the star of the MLS, is playing for Argentina. Many of the players are playing for their home countries. And so at this point in time, there's a break. Now that break's over. And coming up tomorrow night, an entire slate of games on MLS Season Pass. And of course, that's part of Apple TV. Now, not to be outdone, obviously, the Premier League will be on USA and Peacock Saturday and Sunday morning. And they do, I'll tell you what, they and Paramount Plus do a fantastic job of covering this. And, when we were kids, we watched cartoons. Not anymore. The 8 to 16 group of audience, it crushes. I mean, this Premier League on Saturday and Sunday is really a monster for basically a group of people who are going to grow up wanting to watch more soccer, and that's good news for the MLS. It's good news for all 3 streaming services: Apple TV, Paramount Plus, and of course Peacock. So there you go. We have some football tonight. Let's get to that. And you got Army at University of Texas San Antonio. That's a 7 o'clock game on ESPN. Armis Shoroff is going to do the play-by-play. Andre War. Andre is color with Paul Catarera. Virginia at Maryland. That used to be a bit of a rivalry game when Maryland and Virginia were both in the ACC. That game's on FS1. Eric Collins, Devin Gardner on the call for that. The late game, or 8 o'clock game in this case, Utah State at Air Force. That's, of course, Colorado Springs. That's going to be on CBS Sports Network, and that's going to be Alex Del Biaro and Robert Turr. Okay, so those are your games college-wise tonight. And boy, do we have a slew of games tomorrow. So what I'm going to do, bless my producer sneezing. Bless my producer who is sneezing in the background there. All right, let's talk about the best games tomorrow. There'll be a link in the show box below that will give you a list of all of the games, the announcers, the start times, all that. Okay, but let's just take a look and we'll start in the order in which they come up. So let's start with the noon games. The noon games, you got number 3 Florida State at Boston College. It's a 12 p.m. game. Dave Pasch, Dusty Dvorak, and Tom Luckenbill on the call. Now, if you know anything about Florida State and Boston College, for whatever reason, when Florida State goes to Chestnut Hill, it's always crazy. Florida State um, has has really not overperformed well in at Boston College, and even when Jameis Winston was there and they were playing for a national championship, they had all kinds of fits at Boston College. So uh, I know that Florida State's going up there. It's going to be an autumn day. It's going to be a little cooler than probably the Noles are used to. Not cold, but a little cooler. And that's a 12 o'clock kick on ABC. And then you got Penn State number 7 at Illinois. That is the Fox game. We got Gus Johnson and Joe Klatt on it, and it should be. I mean, Penn State should be able to roll over this one. Illinois is having some trouble this year. Then the other game that we picked for the best noon games, number 14 LSU at Mississippi State. That's of course on ESPN, and no question about it. This is LSU's got to get on track, and Mississippi State has been playing pretty well. So we'll see. This could be another challenge for the folks at LSU, and certainly for Coach Brian Kelly. So that's our games that we're highlighting in the noon hour. All right, at Central Michigan Notre Dame, that's a 2:30 game. That's a Peacock game exclusively. Jack Collinsworth on the call with Jason Garrett. Number 10, Alabama, taking on my boys from the University of South Florida. That game sold out in Tampa, and 3:30. Now, as a South Florida Bull fan, I can tell you that the last thing that we needed was Alabama to lose to Texas, because they're going to want to take that. They're going to want to take that out on somebody, and unfortunately, for Bulls fans, the opponent is, of course, South Florida. Now, it would be great if Alex Garsh, who is the new head coach at South Florida, who last time he did face Alabama with Tennessee, they beat them. South Florida's football team is not Tennessee, so if they can get through and pull that upset, that would possibly be the upset of the year. But you never know. Both teams are on scholarships; it could happen. But number 10 Alabama against South Florida. That's 3:30 on ABC. Bobby Wischusen on the call with Robert Griffin III. And then, of course, some people forgot, I don't know how, but CBS does still carry some SEC games. And South Carolina against number 1 Georgia on CBS. That's a 3:30 game. And I wouldn't particularly, I don't think Georgia's in trouble in this game, but it's one of those games that South Carolina is capable of giving Georgia fits. But let's see how things play out. I think if I'm a Georgia fan, I'm in pretty good shape. Let's go to the primetime games. Primetime games is number 11 Tennessee goes to the Swamp to play Florida. That should be a good game. At 7 p.m. On ESPN, Chris Ballard, Herb Herbstreit handling the play-by-play on that game. And it's really, you hasten to say that it's a must-win situation, but for Florida, it really is a must-win. As to Tennessee, I'm not quite sure how good they really are. I mean, obviously they're rated number 11, but it's not the Tennessee, of Mr. Hooker last year. It's a totally different Tennessee team. So, Alex Scotia, as I said, went to South Florida, so they have a new offensive coordinator. It's really going to be interesting to see. And Tennessee has had problems in the Swamp. So let's see if Florida can get back on the good foot, or if Tennessee comes out with this win. It's a bit of a rivalry game. It's not as much of a rivalry game for Florida or Tennessee as Georgia or Florida State would be, but there's history between these two teams, and mainly coaches' histories, and so that's where it elevates to a rivalry. Plus, it's an SEC East game, so definitely something worth checking out. So Tennessee at Florida in primetime, ESPN, Chris Ballard, Herb Street on the call. Pitt, West Virginia. Okay, now that's going to be on ABC. Sean McDonough, Greg McElroy on the call. That's an entertaining game because I'll tell you what, it's a backyard brawl, and it's one of probably the top 5 rivalries in all of college sports. So definitely worth a watch because these two teams have played each other 121 times, and they got a chance to, after a short hiatus, they had a chance to get together last year and play the game at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh won the game, if you remember, very late in the game, and it was a very entertaining game. Drew a little over 4.5 million people. So ratings-wise, it was a monster. So West Virginia and Pitt. This one's being played in Morgantown, 7:30. Sean McDonough, Greg McElroy on the call. TCU is at Houston. That's the Fox game at 8 p.m. Our buddy Tim Brando on the call with Spencer Tillman. And Houston, TCU and Houston have had some disappointing losses. TCU, their disappointing loss, of course, came to Coach Prime in the first game he coached at Colorado. And Houston lost last week to Rice in overtime. So, it's going to be interesting. I know Timmy Brando and Spencer Tillman on the call for that game. So that's the prime time. Now, here we go. Pac-12 After Dark, Colorado against Colorado State University. That game's at 10 o'clock in Boulder. The story is not the game, all right? The story is the fact that today, as we're speaking, in Boulder, there'll be the Pat McAfee show. There is a crew from 60 Minutes in Boulder, for what? We're not quite sure. We put in a request to CBS to find out what's going on with that. But think about this, folks. You've got Colorado State in Boulder to play Colorado. Now, we know the past 2 weeks have been crazy with what's going on out there with Coach Prime, with the team. I mean, everything is falling into place for Colorado. No question about it. So you also have tomorrow something that very rarely happens, and that is ESPN has sent their game day crew out to Boulder, as did Big Ten, and they're having a big noon show out there. So, and ESPN's televising the game. So Fox really has nothing to do from a standpoint of the game's not theirs, but they are going to be out there again for the second week in a row in Boulder. And look, hey, Boulder's a beautiful city, so it wouldn't be a bad place to be. But you might want to think that if you're ESPN, it might have been better for you to be, maybe in Gainesville, where Tennessee and Florida will be playing. But such is not the case. They will be in Boulder, both of them, Saturday, way ahead of the time that the two teams will play, which, as I said, is 10 o'clock at night. Now, noon out there in Boulder is 10 a.m. And so the kickoff for the game is 8 p.m. So it's going to be a while. Now, I'm sure there'll be some crazy shenanigans going on with the crowd and some folks that'll be around even that early before the game. So we'll see how that plays out. But it just goes to prove that the Deion factor just continues to roll and that phenomenon rolls on. So there you go, folks. All right. So that's we got television with regards to our baseball right now, the pennant race, which we talked about with the Rays and the Orioles. We've given you games in college for tonight and for tomorrow. So let's move on. Let's go to the games in the NFL, and specifically, we'll start with CBS's games, the 1 o'clock games. The 1 o'clock games on CBS, Kansas City at Jacksonville, Ian Eagle and Charles Davis on that call. Should be very interesting. Jacksonville is looking for some revenge. They were knocked out of last year's playoffs by the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to be playing that game in Jacksonville. Las Vegas at Buffalo. Kevin Harlan on the call. Trent Green, his analyst. We saw Vegas play pretty well with Jimmy G at quarterback last week. Buffalo, of course, fell in that game to let's see who did. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on what happened with Buffalo last week. I know they lost. They lost to the Jets. That's right. They lost to the Jets. That was the game where, of course, Aaron Rodgers got hurt. So Buffalo and Vegas, it should be a very entertaining game. And Kevin Harlan, Trent Green on the call. Baltimore, Cincinnati, that, of course, is a conference game between two teams from the north. And Andrew Cardelan and Tiki Barber have the call on that game. Baltimore, Cincinnati. It's always a slugfest when those two get together. All right. Let's go to the 1 p.m. games on Fox. That would be Seattle at Detroit, Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson. So they got the A team in Detroit. Clearly, Detroit has become the darling of the NFC, and for good reason. I mean, they beat Kansas City in the opening game, and now they take on Seattle at home. Kevin and Greg will be on the call. Should be a very entertaining game. Chicago at Tampa Bay, Joe Davis and Daryl the Moose Johnson. That game, again, another entertaining game. Justin Fields and Chicago lost to Green Bay last week. Tampa Bay, meanwhile, won against the Vikings. So should be very interesting game being played at Ray J. It's going to be hot, and Tampa's defense will be tested by Justin Fields. But the other side of the coin here is that the quarterback play of Baker Mayfield was quite good last week for the Bucs. So this should be an entertaining game. Chicago at Tampa Bay. Green Bay at Atlanta. Our buddy Kenny Albert and Jonathan Vilma will be on the call there. Interesting enough, just a little quick sidebar. Kenny is part of, and congratulations and kudos to Fox. This is the 30th year that they've had NFL on Fox. And Kenny just happens to be the lone play-by-play guy who's left from that original group of play-by-play people that was hired during that time. We know, of course, that Joe Buck is over with ESPN, and Kevin Harlan's with CBS, and so some of the guys who were hired at the time, it's not like they left the business. It's just that they have moved on to different assignments. Indianapolis and Houston is also going to be one of the early games. Let's move on to the late games. Okay, late games. The Jets at Dallas. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo on the call for that. So that's the national game for CBS. We've already chronicled the Jets throughout this entire week on the issues having to do with the loss of Aaron Rodgers. Dallas, of course, handed the Giants a really bad beating, a 40-0 beating. Opening night, on Sunday Night Football for NBC. This game is on CBS. By the way, all the CBS games will be streamed locally to your area if you are a Paramount Plus subscriber as well. So if you don't have access to CBS broadcast in your area or your streamer, you can get it on Paramount Plus. All of the NFL games that that CBS broadcasts are on Paramount Plus. Okay, so Tony Romo and Jim Nantz will be in Dallas. Meanwhile, in Denver, Washington with Spiro Dedes and Adam Archuleta on the call. The Washington Commanders will be facing Denver. Interesting. That should be a very interesting game. Both teams got off to a bit of a rocky start. Washington winning last week, Denver not, and should be a good game. So that's, again, it's a regional game. The national game is the Jets in Dallas. Here's some more late games on both Fox and ESPN, as well as CBS. All right. Giants at Arizona. Adam Arman and Mark Schlereth on that particular game. The Giants look to get back off the schneid after losing that game we talked about to Dallas last week. San Francisco and the Rams. Now, this is Kevin Kugler and Mark Sanchez on the call for that game. To be honest, I'm a little surprised that, of course, it's a Fox game. The Giants in Arizona is a CBS game. The thing that interests me in this particular situation is I would have thought that the San Francisco and the Rams game might have gotten a little bit more interest given the fact of how these two teams have played with against each other in the last few years and in the same division. But I guess not. San Francisco, my personal pick to be in the Super Bowl. They just happen to be, in my opinion, at this point, the best team in the conference. So we'll see. Many more games to go before we get there. So that's your NFL slate. We do have a night game, and that Sunday night game is the Dolphins against New England. And Miami has just got one monster of an offense. And the other thing is, Tua, who leads that offense, has not lost to New England. He's 4-0 against New England. That game being played up in Foxborough. So the Sunday night game is Miami at New England. So there you go, gang. We've given you plenty of information on where to watch your games and a number of other sports as well. As we said, soccer's back on Apple TV for the MLS fans, because yesterday we were talking about, well, when is it coming back? Well, it's coming back tomorrow. Premier League has already begun. There's some quality matchups there. All of the listings I will put in the show box below, so you can keep posted on what's going on with that. A couple of quick questions from the mailbags here, okay, from our folks on Twitter. Bill wants to know, now that Aaron Rodgers has been hurt and the Jets have been granted 6 prime time games, will the league change those games? No, look, the problem with that is the league sets the schedule in advance. So this changing of the games, now one of the games happens to be the Black Friday game, which is the game that the league has given to Amazon Prime, because of the fact that NBC gets the Thursday night game on Thanksgiving. So they gave an extra game to Prime Video. That's going to be a Dolphins game against the Jets. Even though they've talked about flex scheduling on Thursdays and flex scheduling on Saturdays, I seriously doubt that game is going to be flexed. I don't think anybody wants to flex a Thursday game. Now, they do have 2 games on Sunday coming up. I wouldn't be surprised at all that one later in the season, and again, we're assuming, the Jets did win that game, again, even though they lost Aaron Rodgers. So we don't know. The Jets may just end up being well anyway. So before, panic rushes into the league, or to the fans, do not worry that the Jets are going to be taken off of national television from, the premier games, simply because, at this point in time, changing those games would be very, very difficult, and the league is likely not to do it. And perhaps late in the season, if there's a game there and they're not relevant, meaning the Jets aren't relevant, then it's quite possible they could do it on Sunday. But highly unlikely that they're going to do it on Thursday, and just as unlikely that they're going to move them out of those spots. They've got them in there, and as I said before, moving it requires another game being changed, and it's not something that coaches like. It's not something that owners like, and frankly, it's not something that's fair to the fans. I mean, if you buy a ticket to a 1:00 start and they decide, okay, well, we're going to kick off at 8:00, that changes your day entirely. So, not thinking they're going to do that. As I said before, could they flex? Sure. It's not going to be the Thursday night game, or in this case, the Black Friday game. but it is going to be, if they're going to do it, they'll do it on one of the the Sunday night games, which the Jets are coming into later in the season. Okay, good question. Charter and Disney have this comes from Kyle. There it is, Kyle. Want to know the games. Okay, yeah, all right. He wanted to know about Charter and ESPN. Is there going to be any potential blowback in that ESPN will not be seen or ABC will not be seen on Charter down the road? Well, first of all, down the road is a long way down the road. They just signed an extensive deal, so no, you're okay. Don't worry about it. Don't get PSD on the Charter spectrum and ABC side. Absolutely no. There's no. They signed the deal. They're good, and you'll be able to sit back and watch ESPN and also ABC on your Spectrum television. From now, at least for the next 5 years. So you're good there. So let's see what else we got here. Let's go back to our Twitter bag and see what kind of danger we've gotten into. Now, I know that a lot of people talking about Coach Prime and, excuse me, Coach Prime and Colorado and what's going on there. How come 3 weeks in a row? It's going to be interesting. That'll be very interesting. Skip Bayless, I guess, has excuse me, weighed in already, and Skip is basically saying that he feels that Deion and the Colorado Buffaloes can go through and get at least 6 wins this year, which would make them a bowl eligible team. Skip may be right. Excuse me just for a second, folks, while I get a quick sip of water. He might be right. If they can get by Colorado State tomorrow night, that would be 3 wins there. Now, here's where the tough part comes. The scheduling people didn't do them any favors when it comes to their last season in the Pac-12. Colorado has a number of very difficult games, and the difficult games that they play are really not at home. So I think that life's going to change a little bit for this Colorado team once that they get into play. Remember, this conference is as deep as any in college football, and probably the best. They've got 8 teams within the top 25, and so there really isn't an easy touch with regards to that schedule. So it's going to be more difficult, and to get 3 more games on the winning side is going to be tough. Maybe Cal, maybe Stanford, maybe Arizona. I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. But I'd like to see Deion get get the 6, and I think that what's going on in Colorado is entertaining and should be something that we all kind of just sit back and enjoy for as long as we can enjoy it. As I said, once the season starts, will be next week. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And yeah, Paul Feinbaum. This is Charles asking me. Paul Feinbaum said yesterday that Deion would probably leave Colorado to go to the University of Florida next year. Excuse me. Charles, I don't think that's going to happen. 2 reasons why. First reason is that I don't see Deion being a one and done coach at Colorado. I think he's going to want to stay there for a while and establish, his credibility. And of course, next year they're moving to the Big 12. So I think that is not something that that will be happening. And as far as Florida is concerned, Billy Napier has a buyout that is pretty extensive. Look, I know they're not happy. Gator fans have not been happy with what's gone on so far, but he's still has the number 3 recruiting class coming in for 2024. So I wouldn't be too harsh yet. Let's don't judge him that quickly. And I know what Feinbaum said, but Paul loves to do rumors, so I don't think that he didn't state it as a fact. He stated it as his he thought that might happen. Okay, well, who knows? It might, but I doubt it. I don't. I really think that Deion wants to establish himself at Colorado as a solid coach. You can't do that if you bolt after 1 year. And by the way, a number of the players that he brought to Colorado wouldn't be able to follow him through the portal because they would have to wait a year to transfer. You can only do it that way under special circumstances, and there aren't special circumstances at Colorado at this point. So I think he's happy in Boulder, and I know Boulder's happy because of all of the you know the ESPN and Fox people who have been there, and now, as we said, 60 Minutes is going to come as well. So it's going to be an interesting thing. There's no question about that. But I don't see him leaving Colorado after a year. 4 years, I don't know, maybe. But remember that Dion is a bit of a unicorn in this case. He really has a situation where he's got generational wealth. Okay, he wouldn't have to work a day again in his life at this point in time. He's done that well from a professional standpoint. So that's not an issue with Dion. For Dion, it's what does he want, right? What does he want to accomplish? Where does he want to accomplish it? Right now, it's Colorado. Okay, he may fall in love with Colorado and never leave Colorado. Okay, I don't know what his dream job is. According to Sharon, she says, "Well, is he going to leave for his dream job?" I don't know what the dream job would be. I mean, he graduated from FSU, so maybe that would be his dream job. I don't know. I don't think so, but who knows? Um, he played for a number of football teams, mainly Dallas and San Francisco were the two that he's most known for. I I don't see him necessarily coming and becoming a professional coach. I think he loves college and he likes what he's doing, and so I don't think that's going to be it. So again, I don't know what his dream job is. I think right now his dream job is Colorado, and he's doing a heck of a job there. So let's just keep our eye on the prize, and the eye right now for everybody seemingly is Boulder, Colorado, and every network that covers sports seems to be out there and doing their best to bring every bit of information on the coach and his team to all of us. So hang in there, gang. Don't move Dion yet. I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's headed anywhere that is going to change in the next couple of years. I think he's staying there for at least the 4-year time. And remember, tomorrow, I mean, Colorado State, and Colorado State, by the way, has given Colorado. We talked about teams that give other teams fits, and they shouldn't because they're not on the same talent level. But we talked at the early games tomorrow with FSU going up and playing Boston College about what a pain Boston College has been over the years to FSU. Colorado State's been that same problem for Colorado. So when Colorado State takes the drive over to Boulder today, and they do the walkthrough at the stadium, and they're watching video, they're going to want. I mean, this is one of those games where they're going to come. It's been circled on the calendar, early, and they're being disrespected basically. They're a double-digit underdog, and so I think they're going to come in there and they're going to strap it on and go, let's go. So it's Colorado's going to have to. I'm sure that one of the things that Coach Prime is very good about is making sure that the guys don't read the press releases. So that's not going to be a problem. But Colorado has to look out. Colorado State could come in there. They're certainly capable of pulling an upset there. So that's the After Dark game at 10 o'clock on Saturday night. And as we said before, both game day and big Saturday are there all day tomorrow. So you're going to get an opportunity to see all that from a Colorado and Colorado State standpoint. So that's what we got going on there. Take time to take one or two more questions before we get out of here on a Friday. Let's take a look. All right. Yeah. Okay. Could I go over the games for tomorrow again? Yeah, I can do that for you. It won't take but a minute. All right. Here's what we got at noon. Number 3, Florida State at Boston College, 12 o'clock. You got number 7, Penn State at Illinois. That's again noon. Gus Johnson and Joe Clack. And then LSU, Mississippi State on ESPN. Then we move afternoon time. 2:30, Central Michigan, the Chippewas. Visit number 9, Notre Dame. That's a Peacock game, so streaming only. Jason Garrett and Jacques Collingsworth on the call. Number 10, Alabama at South Florida. That's a 3:30 game. It's on NBC. Bob Wischusen and RG3 on the call there. South Carolina at Georgia, 3:30 p.m. Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson on the CBS call. And let's move to prime time. In prime time, number 11, Tennessee at Florida in the Swamp, 7 o'clock. Fowler and Curb Street on that call. Backyard Brawl, Pitt, West Virginia, 7:30 p.m. on ABC. Sean McDonough, Greg McElroy on the call. TCU in Houston, 8 p.m. on Fox. Brando and Tillman on the call. And then, of course, Colorado and CSU. That game's the 10 o'clock game in Boulder. So there you go. We recapped it for you. So that's what there's all your games. Now, remind you to do this. All of our friends over at Locked On, the Locked On Podcast Network. If you have a favorite team or if you have a game you want to find out about, check out our friends at Locked On. Locked On Pac-12, of course, is Spencer McLaughlin, who was a guest this week. So plenty of very talented people over there. And if you want to find out more about what's going on, they're the folks to help you. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, gang, tell you what, we will be back at the 2 o'clock show, but we also will be back on Monday. So have a great weekend. Enjoy pennant race baseball. Enjoy college football, NFL football, and all of the other fun stuff that's going on, soccer this weekend. And until Monday, you'll have a very safe and a very happy, enjoyable weekend.